Good day to all of our listeners and also those who have started and are continuing to follow us in this study of the Gospel of Mark and the journey of discipleship. And may I ask my companions here to greet our audience. Start with Patrick, please.
Hi, audience. Welcome. Thanks for joining to this five-part series.
Yes.
This five-part series. This is the second to the last,
Yes.
so I hope you'll continue to join us. Thank you.
Vania.
Hi everyone, my name is Vania. Please enjoy what we will discuss in this series. Thank you.
And Lavinia. You have your mic. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Lavina, and hope that our discussion today can be useful for you.
Good. So we are now in lesson 4, and we will see here the perplexing developments in the Gospel of Mark. We see chapter 6 especially, where Jesus would be misunderstood and rejected by his own people. And then the second part would be more of the disciples' journey, how as they follow Jesus, they get increasingly disoriented. Okay, so we will see how that plays out in our presentation and discussion today. So let's see these texts. These are all about chapter 6, and we will take turns in reading. So we begin with Patrick here.
Leaving that place, Jesus returned to his own country, and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and most of those who heard him were astonished. But they said, "How did this come to him? What kind of wisdom has been given to him, that he also performs such miracles? Who is he but the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother James and Jose and Judas and Simon? His sisters too are not here among us?" So they took offense at him. And Jesus said to them, "Prophets are despised only in their own country, among their relatives and in their own family." And he could work no miracles there, but only heal a few sick people by laying his hands on them. Jesus himself was astounded at their unbelief.
Yes, so that is a bit dramatic, right? You go into your own town, your own country, and then people start to, they scrutinize you. Here in this text, we see the ID, Jesus' identification according to his townsmate. So the first thing that they said is he was a carpenter. In the version of Matthew, it's really more of the carpenter's son. But here it's really, he is a carpenter. So we see the link also, no? We see the link. But the fact that he was called more son of Mary rather than son of Joseph, that's also quite interesting. Because contrary to the Jewish custom, which calls a man the son of his father, this expression may reflect Mark's own faith that God is the father of Jesus. I don't know, Vania would remember our very first session, Mark 1, verse 1. This gospel is the Gospel of Mark. It's called the Gospel of Jesus Christ, Son of God, right?
Yeah.
The Gospel of Jesus Christ, Son of God. So that must be also in the mind of Mark. He does not even mention Joseph. No, it's not presented. Is this not the son of Joseph, the carpenter? Is he not the carpenter? No, the son of Mary. That's very strange, because usually the man or anybody is more linked to the patriarch of the family. Okay, and then what else in the identity of Jesus here? They mention his brothers. Okay, James, Joseph, Judas, Simon, which in Semitic usage, this term brother or sister may also be applied not only to the children of the same parents, but really the bigger clan, the nephews, nieces, cousins, half-brothers, half-sisters. I don't know, do you have this tradition in the Chinese, I don't know, Patrick, in the Chinese tradition? They're also called brothers?
Yeah, I'm sure in some.
Yeah.
In some ethnic groups in
Yes.
Chinese community, there is this close collegiate of family members, and I'm sure they would associate themselves as brothers and sisters, even though they're not from the same mother and father. So yes, I think that would happen.
Yes, so it's not only in the Semitic culture, no, but also in some cultures. And the sad thing here in this dramatic reading is a little bit what we have in chapter 3, verse 21, when the relatives of Jesus came to Capernaum, where he was preaching, and they wanted to get him because they thought he was crazy, out of his mind, okay? So this is a little bit parallel to that, but here we have the whole village, okay? That's why Jesus here is taken as a prophet without honor. He said that saying, a prophet only in his own country would not be accepted, which is also true in our culture. There's too much familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt, right? So anyway, the main figure being presented here of Jesus is being a prophet. Okay, comparing him to previous Hebrew prophets whom the people rejected. You will remember maybe Jeremiah. Jeremiah was also a rejected prophet. Ezekiel, and so forth. So Jesus, through this, Jesus intimates already his own eventual rejection by the nation, previewed here in this dishonor which he receives from his own townspeople. In the Gospel of Luke, this is even more dramatic. I don't know if you would remember, in the Gospel of Luke, this same episode, he went to his own hometown, and then the people were telling him, do what we have heard you been doing in Capernaum. Heal the sick, make miracles. And then Jesus really had a frontal collision there. He said, who was healed in the time of Naaman? Only a leper from another place, etc. At the end of that, after the townspeople praised him, the end of the story was they wanted to hurl him down that valley and kill him. Yes. So it's really more dramatic. So if you read the same episode in Luke, it's more elaborate. In the beginning, you remember, Vanya, we said the Gospel of Mark is very short. Okay? So the other Gospels, the Matthew and Luke, were able to elaborate more. Okay? And that is one example of how they were able to dramatize more. Prophet without honor, which also meant that Jesus was not able to perform any mighty deed there because of the lack of faith. Okay, that Jesus' power could not take effect because of the person's lack of faith. So maybe at this point we can recall, will you recall any instance in the Mark's Gospel where, faith is required for the miracle to happen? We had one last week. Do you remember?
Yeah, the woman and
the girl?
Yeah, the girl that was bleeding.
Okay, the woman, the bleeding woman, the hemorrhaging woman in chapter 5.
Right.
Jesus' power, he was not even aware. You remember, the woman touched Jesus' cloak and he was not even aware that somebody, he asked who touched me? Okay, and then when this woman confessed that she was the one, then Jesus said, your faith has healed you. Right. Go in peace. So you see there the faith, really affecting the cure. And then connected to that would be the girl who was, first she was sick, but then she died as Jesus was going to the house. Yeah. And then what did Jesus say to the father? do not fear, just have faith. Okay, and there was the raising up of this girl. Okay, so the faith is really important in effecting the healing, and this is not happening in the town of Jesus in Nazareth. No. In a way, you can say it's not his fault. It's the rejection that he received that made also his power, that also limited his power to work miracles. Okay. Now, from this, we move on to the mission training of the 12. And here we have, again, the sandwich style of Mark. We read first the verses 6, 7 to 13. Okay. So
Jesus sends out the 12. Jesus then went around the village teaching. He called the 12 to him and began to send them out 2 by 2, giving them authority over evil spirits. And he ordered them to take nothing for the journey except a staff, no food, no bag, no money in their belts. They were to wear sandals and were not to take an extra tunic. And he added, "In whatever house you are welcome, stay there until you leave the place. If any place doesn't receive you and the people refuse to listen to you, leave after shaking the dust off your feet. It will be a testimony against them." So they set out to proclaim that this was the time to repent. They drove out many demons and healed many sick people by anointing them.
okay. Who are these 12? Will you be able to name them? Try. Then we will complete. So just name
Peter, John,
James,
James,
the brother of Peter,
Andrew.
Okay, you have already 4. Can you
taken the first one.
okay, the next 4? Matthew. Okay.
Luke is not, right?
No.
Yeah.
So Matthew, and then you have still.
John is already mentioned, is he?
Yes, because
Okay.
brothers, the 2 brothers. There's
Judas Iscariot.
yes.
Jude, the one who betrayed.
There are actually 2 Judes. But anyway, that's why they always say Judas Iscariot to betray him, because there's also Jude Thaddeus.
Right.
Yes.
So I've got 3 now.
And then you have there's another Simon.
Simon, right?
Yeah, actually there are 2 Simons, Simon Peter and then Simon the Zealot. Okay, so we have 8.
8.
There are, that the easy names, no? You have Bartholomew or Nathanael. And then you missed the evangelist, Matthew or Levi. We also mentioned last time, he has 2 names. Levi would be the Hebrew name, and Matthew would be more of the Greek name. Okay? And then who else? There's Philip. Philip would also be like a Greek name, because the father of Alexander the Great was Philip. No? When the Greeks wanted to talk to Jesus, they had to go first to Philip. Okay. So we have already how many? 11. Who's the other one? Like Bartholomew has 2 names also. He is Bartholomew and Nathanael. Okay. So anyway, so we have these 12 as the ones really chosen to say, do the same that Jesus did, okay? To preach, to exercise, to heal. But I hope it's clear that the disciples were more than 12. Because, how do we know that? In the Acts of the Apostles, when Judas was removed from the 12, they had to take in another one to complete the 12. Because what's the significance of 12?
12 times complete.
The
12 tribes of
the
Israel.
tribes of Israel. They're connected to the foundation. You know, these 12, you know, as they were saying, and you will see that also later, the numbers in the Bible are not just in different choice. It has meanings. So the 12. And then, so these 12 were given the same power of Jesus. And this is their first, how do you say this? Like an initiation rite, okay, to do the mission. There are differences in the stories of Luke and Matthew, because here, Mark allowed many things, like you can use a walking stick or force to defend yourself, no? Sandals permitted also. But, and then with Mark, they were not prohibited to visit pagan territory or enter Samaritan towns, because in the other Gospels that was not allowed. So some Bible scholars were saying these differences indicate a certain adaptation to conditions in and outside of Palestine. Meaning to say, here you can already have a glimpse of the missionary work of the church, the early community of Mark, no? The later activity. So we read the next part, when they returned. When the apostles returned, and that is verses 30 to 33.
Okay.
Lavina, can we hear from you?
Jesus, shepherd and prophet. The apostle returned and reported to Jesus all they had done and taught. Then he said to them, "Let us go off by ourselves into a remote place and have some rest." For there were so many people coming and going that the apostle had no time even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a secluded area by themselves. But people saw them leaving, and many could guess where they were going. So from all the towns they hurried there on foot, arriving ahead of them.
Yes, and you can continue.
As Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he had compassion on them, for they were like a sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things.
Very good. So you see here that the mission was a success. They were able to do as Jesus was doing, okay? And that was something, no? And you notice also in the reading, he already introduced the word apostles. Apostles from apostolane, that means being sent forth. So it's not just staying with Jesus, but also being sent forth, okay? And you see that also Jesus is, he wanted to care for them. So after a good day's work or a good mission, they have to rest, but then they could not. Okay, the people were with them. The people were looking for them. And here you already see the vision of the shepherd, the compassionate shepherd. Okay? Now, in between these two, we have the destiny of John the Baptist, which is also like a precursor of what will happen to Jesus. Okay? When in the first part of chapter 6, we had Jesus being rejected by his townsmate. Now, we will see in this life, the final hours of John the Baptist, how this will also have an implication in the life of Jesus. Okay, so we read that, chapter 6, 14 to 16.
King Herod also heard about Jesus because his name had become well known. Some people said, "John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him." Others thought he's Elijah, and others he is a prophet like the prophets of times past. When Herod was told of this, he thought, "I had John beheaded, yet he has risen from the dead."
Wow. So that is one, the opinions, no, about Jesus. And you have to remember this well, because later this will be repeated. When Jesus will ask the disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" This is practically the same response, no? either Elijah or John the Baptist raised back from the dead, or another prophet. Meaning to say, it was consistent in the line of the identification of Jesus. He was identified as one of the prophets. Okay? That is natural, no? Because in the tradition is what you bring with you in the culture. And that is what they know. They are also waiting for that. But nobody mentions yet the Messiah. Okay, we will see that later, and that will be the development of the knowledge of the mystery of Jesus. Now, the next part would be the death of John the Baptist. So let us also hear this very dramatic episode. Okay? When we started in the beginning, Vanya was here, we know that Jesus started his ministry when John the Baptist was imprisoned. Okay, so this is what happened to John after that. Okay.
For this is what had happened. Herod had ordered John to be arrested and had him bound and put in prison because of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip. Herod had married her, and John had told him, "It is not right for you to live with your brother's wife." So Herodias held a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she could not, because Herod respected John. He knew John to be an upright and holy man and kept him safe. And he liked listening to him, although he became very disturbed when he heard him. Herodias had her chance on Herod's birthday, when he gave a dinner for all the senior government officials, military chiefs, and the leaders of the Galilee. On that occasion, the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, and she delighted Herod and his guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want, and I will give it to you." And he went so far as to say with many oaths, "I will give you anything you ask, even half of my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" The mother replied, "The head of John the Baptist." The girl hurried to the king and made her request, "I want you to give me the head of John the Baptist here and now on a dish." The king was very displeased, but he would not refuse in front of his guests because of his oath. So he sent one of the bodyguards with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded John in prison. Then he brought the head on a dish and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. When John's disciples heard of this, they came and took his body and buried it.
Oh my. So, what a drama, no? Now, if you study very well this pericope, this episode, you will see some similarities, to be noted between this account, what happened to John the Baptist, and also the Passion of Jesus. The Passion of Jesus will already be in Mark 15, okay? But just to note this down, because, the gospel is really about Jesus, so even the personages that are present in there would have something to do with Jesus. So one similarity, Herod and Pilate, each in turn acknowledges the holiness of life of one over whom he unjustly exercises the power of condemnation and death. So Herod acknowledges the sanctity of, or the holiness of John the Baptist. That's why he wanted to protect him somehow, no? The same with Pilate. In the trial of Jesus, so Pilate would really say, I see this is an innocent man, okay? I see no crime in him. So that is one. The other is the antagonist. So the antagonist is the woman, Herodias. No? So this one, that hatred of Herodias towards John parallels that of the Jewish leaders towards Jesus. Okay? So the wife of Herod would be the parallel figure, that is against, this one is John the Baptist, but parallel to the Jewish leaders against Jesus. You have a picture there. That's a famous Italian painter, if I remember. That's the head of John the Baptist. And then the third part, the third parallelism is that after the deaths of John and Jesus, well-disposed persons requested the bodies of the victim of Herod and of Pilate to give them respectful burial. So here, in what we read now, you have the disciples of John, who really came out to retrieve the body of John. Whereas in the story of Jesus, you have, I think, Joseph of Arimathea requesting Pilate, so that they can give an honored, decent burial to Jesus. So in a way, what happened to John the Baptist was already like a preview of what will happen to Jesus. So this is common in the writings of the sacred writings of the apostles. Like in the Acts of the Apostles, what happened to Jesus would also be parallel to what happened to Stephen. You remember when Stephen was stoned? The last words that he said, "Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." The same words of Jesus when he died. Okay, so it's already a reflection on discipleship. What happens to the teacher, to the master, will happen to the disciple. So what happened also to John the Baptist will happen to Jesus. And so what happened to Jesus might happen to us. Meaning to say, we are followers and we have to be ready for that. That is the point of our writer, Mark. No? Now we continue, and here this is also, we already mentioned Jesus being the compassionate shepherd, which the people look for. They followed. Everywhere he went, they were there. So now we will see the episode of the feeding of the multitude. And there are two episodes of this. Let's read the first one from chapter 6. Okay?
First miracles of the loaves. It was now getting late, so his disciples came to him and said, "This is a lonely place, and it is now late. You shall send the people away and let them go to the farms and villages around here to buy themselves something to eat." Jesus replied, "You yourselves give them something to eat."
Yes.
They answered, "If we are to feed them, we need 200 silver coins to go and buy enough bread." But Jesus said, "You have some loaves. How many? Go and see." The disciples found out and said, "There are 5 loaves and 2 fish." Then he told them to have the people sit down, together in groups on the green grass. This they did in groups of hundreds and fifties. And Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and raising his eyes to heaven, he pronounced a blessing, broke the loaves, and handed them to his disciple to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them. They all ate, and everyone had enough. The disciples gathered up what was left and filled 12 baskets with broken pieces of bread and fish. 5,000 men had eaten there.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is the first feeding of the multitude. Maybe first thing to note here, all the 4 Gospels have this narrative. It's just that the difference is Mark would have 2 episodes, Mark and Matthew, whereas John would have 1 and Luke has also 1. So I would like to compare this to the second feeding, the second episode, so that we will see the differences and also the similarities. So if we go to chapter 8, verses 1 to 9, we will hear now the second feeding. And then we will also see maybe why there is a need for 2. What do you gain by having 2 narratives if they are very similar? So shall we listen to chapter 8?
Soon afterward, Jesus was in the midst of another large crowd that obviously had nothing to eat. So they called his disciples and said to them, "I feel sorry for these people. because they have been with me for 3 days and now have nothing to eat. If I send them to their homes hungry, they will faint on the way. Some of them have come a long way." His disciples replied, "Where in the desert place like this could we get enough bread to feed these people?" He asked them, "How many loaves have you?" And they answered, 7. Then he ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. Taking the 7 loaves and giving thanks, he broke them and handed them to his disciples to distribute. They were distributed, and they distributed them among the people. They also had some small fish, so Jesus said a blessing and asked that these be shared as well. The people ate and were satisfied, and they picked up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. Now those who had eaten were about 4,000 in number. Jesus sent them away and immediately got into a boat, and his disciples went to the region of Dalmanutha.
Okay. First thing, why 2? Why do we have 2 narrations? So, as some Bible scholars noted, the difference is really in the location. The feeding of the 5,000 took place near Bethsaida. I think it's already identified with many archaeologists now. It's in Tabgha. I remember going to the Holy Land, and part of the pilgrimage would always be go to Tabgha for to see or to relieve the feeding of the 5,000. Okay, that area is actually the area of the Jews. No? Remember, Jesus was in Capernaum, teaching in Capernaum. So it's just that around that area of Bethsaida. Now the feeding of the 4,000, in contrast, took place in the Gentile area. So that will be down there. But you remember the episode of the Gerasene demoniac, chapter 5? The one who was exorcised by legion, the legion of demons exorcised by Jesus. That area was more of a Gentile area. Okay, so we are almost in the same place. The first region then was a Jewish territory, and the second was around the Decapolis, already a Gentile territory. Okay, so in the first, and maybe these ones with the numbers will help. Okay, in the first miracle, Jesus takes 5 loaves and fed 5,000. Okay, which is reminiscent of the 5 books of the Jewish law, the Torah. Okay, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, because this is the Jewish. This is the Jewish law, the most precious tradition they have. Okay, and when they finish eating, how many baskets of leftover? 12. So again, what is the meaning of the 12? The 12 tribes. And now the 12 disciples. So it's easier to remember now, no? when you will be asked, the first feeding was the feeding of the 5,000 with how many loaves? 5 loaves and 2 fish. Actually, there is also I think there are associations here, Christian associations, which are called 5 loaves and 2 fish. Anyway, so the 5, and then how many people fed? 5,000. And how many baskets left over? 12. Okay. What about the next episode? So in the second miracle, you have 7 loaves, no? And then how many baskets collected after?
7.
7. What is the symbol or the meaning of number 7?
Complete.
Completeness. It's perfection.
Yes.
Do you believe that? Okay, because in many cultures, really, 7 is the number, the perfect number. You don't know that, Levida, because you're so young.
Well, think of it this way.
Yeah.
God created everything within 7 days.
Okay, good.
That's why it's complete.
So, but even in the tradition of the Jewish Christian tradition, so All these have meanings. We are now in the Gentile territory where God is understood more, not so much from the Jewish tradition, but more of the human tradition. Even in the story of in Genesis, you have different kinds of covenant there. One of the covenants that say the covenant of God with Noah would be more of the covenant with humanity. Okay, you remember the rainbow?
Yeah.
So no more floods because God loves humanity. Okay, but there's also the covenant with Abraham, and that would be the Jewish. So here even here in the Gospel of Mark, you have these kinds of presentation. Okay, but the other thing is, so both miracles show the providence of God for all His creation, Jews and Gentiles alike. He provides for all because He loves all. But there is also another thing here in the feeding of the multitude. It's a very strong narration and tradition because of the Eucharistic resonance. When we hear Jesus took the bread, blessed, broke, and gave to His disciples, what comes to your mind?
Eucharist.
The Eucharist. The Eucharist, no? It's really the actions. In the Gospel of John, practically, you have only the narration of the feeding. You don't have the narration of the institution of the Eucharist. You will see this, or you will hear this on Good Friday. No? There is no institution of the Eucharist. What do you have? Good Friday. Holy Thursday. During the Last Supper, what you have in John is the washing of the feet. It's already the meaning of the Eucharist. Why? Because he puts all the explanation of the Eucharist in John 6, in the multiplication of the loaves.
Right.
The multiplication of the loaves in John chapter 6 is very, very long because all the discourses are there, starting from feeding the 5,000 up to the meaning of Jesus as the bread of life. Those who eat my flesh, will have eternal life. So there's the, let's say, the connection of the bread now with the sacrifice of Jesus. That all happened in that instance. Whereas in Mark was the model for the other two. So that would be Matthew and Luke. From this, you have already the Eucharistic resonance. And also there's another word there, the fragments left over. In Greek, that would be klasmata, or the broken bread of the Eucharist. That's used by the Didakes, the teaching of the 12 disciples or the 12 apostles. So here in this narration is so important for the Christian community because of that, because of the Eucharistic celebration that even in the very early times they were already practicing as part of the tradition. Okay? And I think connecting it also to Jesus, the compassionate shepherd, we heard it in the reading, who can give bread in this deserted place. So this deserted place has become a green pasture. Okay, it has been transformed into a place of grace, and the people as the beneficiaries. So the importance of this narration of the feeding of the multitude, I would say it's also a challenge to solidarity. Okay, so the Eucharist is not just the offering of Jesus, of His life, but also the offering of His life for all. Okay, and then we will see that even further in the teachings on discipleship. Good. Now, the sequence, this is also true in all the other narration of the multiplication. We have the walking on the water. And maybe we can read that first. And we will see also the significance. That's chapter 6. We're back to chapter 6, 45 to 52.
Jesus walks on the water. Immediately, Jesus obliged His disciples to get into the boat and go ahead of Him to the other side, toward Bethsaida, while He Himself sent the crowd away. And having sent the people off, he went by himself to the hillside to pray. When evening came, the boat was far out on the lake while he was alone on the land. Jesus saw his disciples straining at the oars, for the wind was against them. And before daybreak, he came to them walking on the lake, and he was going to pass them by. When they saw him walking on the lake, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But at once he called to them, "Courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Then Jesus got into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely astonished, for they had not really grasped the fact of the loaves. Their minds were dull.
Yes, that is quite a judgment by Mark. Their minds were done, but actually, in some versions, their hearts were hardened. Okay, but here you remember last episode we were in chapter 4. There was also an incident in the sea, the turbulent sea. Okay, so Mark 4:35 to 41, the disciples also labored against the turbulent sea, and you will remember, Patrick, because there was a trivia there. When Jesus was sleeping on the cushion while the disciples were laboring, struggling. But Jesus showed his power over the waters. The response of the disciples there, who is this man who has power over the elements, the wind and the sea? Now here in this episode, there is more, because you see here Jesus walking on the water. Now, this is the version of Mark, but in Matthew, there's an elaboration there. Chapter 14 of Matthew, there is even Peter asking Jesus, "Allow me to walk. If it is really you, allow me to walk on the water." And you remember what happened?
He tried to get out of the boat, but I
Yes.
think he fell. Like he drowned.
And then he said, "Master, help me." And then Jesus told Matthew,
Have faith.
"O man of little faith." Okay, so it's another proof of the need for faith. But do you see how the other evangelist elaborates on one episode? Okay, so here with Mark, it's very simple. It's very simple. Jesus walking in the water, and he did not even want the disciples to see. He intended to pass them by, but then they saw him. Okay. This word of Jesus, "It is I, do not be afraid." In the translation of John, in John 6, it's really "I am." Do not be afraid, I am. And what is that word "I am"? In Genesis chapter 3, Exodus chapter 3, when Moses asked God, "What shall I tell the Egyptians if they ask me, 'What is your name?'" So God said, I am who am. Okay, so this is practically already a declaration. It's still hidden, it's still veiled. A declaration of the divinity. It's a divine revelatory formula of Exodus. God's name is I am, Yahweh. Okay, so Mark is already here implying the hidden identity of Jesus as Son of God. In the Gospel of John, that is really at the heart of John 6, the I am. But it's interesting to hear the disciples' response. The disciples had not understood the loaves, meaning they did not even understand they have a divine being there with them. The revelatory character of this sign and that of the walking of the sea on the sea completely escaped the disciples. Their hearts were hardened. Or in that version that we read just now,
Dull.
Their minds were dull. Okay, obtuse, they could not get the signs. And this position prevents the disciples from comprehending, from understanding Jesus' self-revelation through signs. And you will see, you will notice this also, if we go back to that incident on the loaves of chapter 8, remember the second feeding, after that, there will be a discussion also about the loaves. No? This is like a reinforcement. So maybe you can read chapter 8. Can we go to chapter 8, 14 to 21? And you will see there again how the disciples will react. Okay, 8, 14 to 21.
The disciples had forgotten to bring more bread.
Yes, that one.
And had only one loaf with them in the boat. Then Jesus warned them, "Keep your eyes open and beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod." And they said to one another, "He saw that we have no bread." Aware of this, Jesus asked them, "Why are you talking about the loaves you are short of? Do you not see or understand? Are your minds closed? Have you eyes that don't see and ears that don't hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves among 5,000? How many baskets full of leftover did you collect?" They answered, 12. "And having distributed 7 loaves to the 4,000, how many wicker baskets of leftover did you collect?" They answered, 7. Then Jesus said to them, "Do you still not understand?"
Okay, it's so explicit, no? The other one was so direct, their minds were dull or their hearts were hardened. But here, you really see or hear Jesus say, "How dull you are." I mean, I have multiplied so much bread, and now you are fighting about bread. How come you could not understand? So it's the blindness, if you want, no? You have eyes, but you cannot see. You have ears, but you cannot hear. So how blind can you be? That's why I was saying, I entitled this episode as Jesus being misunderstood, no? And the disciples having their disorientation gradually increasing. As they followed Jesus, instead of following him with more sight and clarity, they seem to be more confused. Okay. So we continue, and this time in this second segment, we will look more into the disciples' difficulty to understand. No? So Jesus already said, "How come you have eyes but you cannot see, and ears but you cannot hear?" So here we have this turning point, no? In chapter 8. We skipped chapter 7 because I would like to finish this segment really with the 3 lessons on discipleship. We will see here in chapter 8, verses 27 to 30, the revelation of who Jesus is. This will be the turning point in Mark's account, no? Because in the beginning, everybody, who is this man? Okay. Now, little by little, we will really see Jesus saying who he is. Okay, can we read that, please?
Jesus set out with his disciples for the village around Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" And they told him, "Some say you are John the Baptist, others say you are Elijah or one of the prophets." Then Jesus asked them, "But you, who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." And he ordered them not to tell anyone about him.
Yeah. So here, as we said, no, a turning point. You heard this question when Herod said his opinion about Jesus. So the exact thing, no? The answer is you are John the Baptist, or you are Elijah, or one of the prophets, no? But then Peter's answer is you are the Messiah. The thing is, Jesus doesn't want Peter and the disciples to really say that outright. Why? Because there is still a mistaken notion of being a Messiah. And maybe we can also understand that, because their understanding would be more of a political liberator. Okay, that's natural, no? They belong to that tradition. And so, in the next reading, we will see here the first prediction of the Passion. And Jesus will also clarify what this Messiah means, okay? Let's read 8:30.
And he ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Jesus then began to teach them that the Son of Man had to suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law. He would be killed and after 3 days rise again. Jesus said all this quite openly so that Peter took him aside and began to protest strongly. But Jesus, turning around and looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as people do."
Wow. You think that's strong, no?
It is.
I mean, how could they? Jesus called Peter Satan.
Yeah.
Okay, what narrative or what tradition would bring out this story? But anyway, so the first thing is, instead of Messiah, Jesus calls himself here as Son of Man. So Son of Man is another enigmatic title, but that goes with the Old Testament verse, the reading in Daniel, symbolizing the saints of the Most High, no? The faithful ones who receive the everlasting kingdom from the Ancient One. Now, you will also notice when Jesus said the elders, chief priests, and the scribes, these are the ones who would put him to death. He did not mention so much the Pharisees. It's really more of the religious leaders. The Pharisees would be more really on the teaching side. In fact, that's why some people, some scholars would even say, maybe Jesus was really following also the Pharisee, because Pharisees are not so much what we have as the ones contesting Jesus, but so much as trying to understand the law. The Pharisees are the ones trying to understand the law. In this Gospel of Luke, actually, Jesus would have some invitations from the Pharisees. No? Okay, let's continue with this. So, we know the response of Peter. And so, the source I'm using is that it is hard to imagine early Christians creating a story in which Peter is addressed as Satan. Okay? Which is true, no? You have your leader. And we said in the beginning of these episodes that Mark was really using the tradition from Peter. Peter calls Mark my son. Okay? So Peter expresses the incorrect understanding of Jesus' messiahship that Mark the evangelist wished to rectify. And that's why he made it very strong. I was saying, Mark was really, he's very provocative. He wants you to think. Okay? So he used this word, get behind me, Satan. So what is this? Anyone who denies the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus stands on the side of Satan. By calling Peter Satan, Jesus indicates that the false view of his messiahship is a temptation. No? You know that, yeah?
I think in a sense, I just remembered, I read somewhere, somehow Jesus broke Peter's dream because he kind of dreamed of having a teacher who can be like a true king. You know, like people... the crowd actually praise him, and that's why when Jesus started to talk about what he will actually go through, and then like people started kind of fight against God. Like also Peter, there is a story where Peter cut off
the ear of
ears.
one of the yes, in the Passion narrative.
So actually, I just remembered. Actually, Peter is interesting character, I would say, because there is one scene where he actually fight for God because he denied what Jesus will have to go through. But somehow when he denied Jesus himself, he is also fight against God.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting
He gave in
character,
to the
I think.
temptation.
Yes, exactly.
In a way. So the first temptation was here in the understanding of the Messiah.
Right.
And so that's why, as we were saying, Jesus, or Mark, the narrator, says, Peter is giving in to a temptation, so it's like Satan. Satan tempting Jesus to give up this destiny of the passion, death, and the resurrection. Okay? Of course, because Peter can only arrive at a certain point, so we can also excuse him. No? So, and then we continue. From this discussion comes out the discipleship lesson 1, because this will be sequenced, no? 8, 9, and 10. So let's listen to this first part of the teaching on discipleship. We're going deeper into the theme of discipleship.
Take up your cross. Then Jesus called the people and his disciples and said, If you want to follow me, deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. For if you choose to save your life, you will lose it. And if you lose your life for my sake, and for the sake of the gospel, you will save it. What good is it to gain the whole world while destroying your soul? There is nothing more precious than your soul. I tell you, if anyone is ashamed of me and of my words among this adulterous and sinful people, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels.
Wow. So, the first lesson on the disciple. Who is a disciple? The disciple does what the master does. Okay? And what does the master do? He carried his cross. So, the disciple is a cross bearer. Cross bearing here may express the submission to divine authority on the analogy of the condemned criminals' submission to Roman authority. That is very strong. No? So, whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it. The first thing we note here is the translation of his life. In the translation here is his soul, to save his soul. No? The Greek is really psyche, where we get the word psyche or soul. No? Or mind, but it's really translated more as the whole life, the entire life. Okay? And then for my sake and that of the gospel. So it's always, the saying is always for Jesus' sake and for the gospels. Why? Because there is the consistency of the gospel is not a book. The gospel is Jesus. Again, we remember the title of the gospel. The gospel of Jesus, the Son of God. Okay? So, the giving up for the sake of Jesus and the gospel is really the good news, or giving up for Jesus himself. Okay? And then, the challenges to authentic discipleship would include this self-renunciation. So, first lesson is really cross-bearing, and self-renunciation. Now, what life is being mentioned here? Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, will save it. You see here the expression of the ambivalence of life. Life is seen as a mere self-centered earthly existence, and lived in denial of Christ ends in destruction. When your life is limited only to this earth, to the material sense. Whereas, if it is lived in loyalty to Christ, despite earthly death, then there is fullness of life. Okay? And I guess many films have also been built around this theme. No? I mean, limiting yourself only to material existence will will only bring you perdition,
Right.
no? Lost. So, from this cross-bearing and self-renunciation, which are very strong, very heavy, no? There is like a respite on chapter 9. We're given chapter 9, the first few verses of chapter 9, a vision of the transfiguration. You hear
And
that?
he went, and he went on to say, "Truly I tell you, there are some here who will not die before they see the kingdom of God coming with power." 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain. There his appearance was changed before their eyes. Even his clothes shone, became as white as no bleach of this world could make them. Elijah and Moses appeared to them. The two were talking with Jesus. Then Peter spoke and said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But he did not know what to say. They were overcome with awe, but a cloud formed covering them. In a shadow from the cloud came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." And suddenly, as they looked around, they no longer saw anyone except Jesus with them. They came down the mountain. He ordered them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept this to themselves, although they discussed it with one another, what to rise from the dead could mean.
Wow. Do you see there also, there's a kind of an irony there. They were given a glimpse of the transfiguration or the form of Jesus, no? Glorious state. But in the end, the discussion is, what does rising from the dead mean? You see the irony? So, all in all, it's really the difficulty of the disciples to understand. Okay? Even here, in this narration, immediately you see Peter very spontaneously saying, let us prolong this experience. Let us build 3 booths. And for him, it's just equal. There's Elijah, there's Moses, there's Jesus. Equal. No? He could not understand that it was the one who was transformed was Jesus. The one who got a new form was Jesus. Okay? And Elijah, anybody would know why Elijah and Moses were there? These figures, yeah?
Moses with the commandments?
Yes. And Elijah,
Prophets.
the tradition of the prophets. Okay? So the law, Moses, and then the prophets, Elijah. So that's practically 2 of the strongest traditions in the Jewish religion, no? The law and the prophets. You hear that also in Matthew, the law and the prophets say this, etc. So this is just attesting, to the importance of this person, Jesus. But then Peter just erased that. They're all the same for him. Okay, so that now you have the overshadowing of God's presence, the cloud. And that was not enough. There was the voice. Okay? So the voice from the cloud is the divine voice correcting Peter's position. It alludes also to the identification of Jesus at the baptism. You remember, chapter 1?
Yeah.
So, you are my beloved son. In you I am well pleased. And the command to hear Jesus may point also to his passion predictions. Look at it this way. The passion predictions are very difficult for the disciples. And that's why you had that reaction of Peter. Okay, may it never happen to you, Master. So, Jesus understands that. That's why we are given this glimpse. In our liturgy, the second Sunday of Lent is always the narration, the Gospel of Transfiguration. Try to remember that for your when you teach the children. Levina is our teacher, and also Varia for the Sunday school, no? If you want to memorize the gospel, the first Sunday of Lent will always be temptations, okay? But the second Sunday of Lent will always be transfiguration. So you have the whole picture, okay? So practically the temptation is just one stage, but then the arrival point would be resurrection, transfiguration, no? Transformation. But before you can go there, you have to pass through Jerusalem. No cross, no glory. But that is life, no? Practically, that is really what happens to us, no? The disciples' difficulty practically is also because they believe in the resurrection, but maybe it's more of a generalized resurrection when everybody is died and, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't blame them. Sometimes you can say we commiserate with them because that is also our lot. We could not understand the resurrection. I remember my father was grappling with this. How can you believe, you know, nobody really came out. He said, yeah, it's really faith. I was given that faith. It's not given to everybody, you know. So be grateful if you receive that faith. Now, let's go to the second prediction, because we said it's a sequence, no? If you go to chapter 9 now, we hear again the same, similar prediction, and again, the disciples' disorientation or lack of understanding. So let's read chapter 9, 30 to 37.
Jesus again speaks of his passion. After leaving that place, they made their way through Galilee. But Jesus did not want people to know where he was, because he was teaching his disciples. And he told them, "The Son of Man will be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, but 3 days after he has been killed, he will rise." The disciples, however, did not understand these words, and they were afraid to ask him what he meant.
Yes. The poor disciples, again, were afraid to ask him because practically this is the second time he's repeating, you know, his destiny. And I guess also Mark kept on repeating this to reinforce his point that discipleship, you know, following Jesus is not easy. Okay. And you will see here, again, what is the point of Jesus in the second prediction of the Passion? The role of the disciple is to follow the master in the act of service. So maybe if we continue with us reading.
Yeah.
So,
who is the greatest? They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, Jesus asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they didn't answer because they had been arguing about who was the greatest.
can you imagine that? Jesus was saying, this is what will happen to me. And instead of listening to that, they were arguing who was the greatest. Okay.
They're still dealing with the earthly things. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If someone wants to be the first, let him be last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child, placed him in their midst, and putting his arms around him, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes a child such as this in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me."
Okay, we stop there, no? But I said the disciples are really grappling to understand who is this master. And so here you have the next, let's say, description of a disciple is one who serves. Okay, one who serves especially the poor and the lowly. Said, if anyone wishes to be first, no, because they were discussing who was the greatest. If you want to be first, then you shall be the last of all and the servant of all. So if in the first lesson is the cross-bearing and self-renunciation, now it's the servant disciple or the servant figure. And that is still following the master. Now, we go to the third prediction and we jump to chapter 10 because it's quite similar. You will see really the hardness of the mind of the disciples, no? The obtuseness, how difficult it is for them to understand. So 10:32 to 34 first.
They were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus walking ahead. The 12 were anxious, and those who followed were afraid. Once more, Jesus took the 12 aside to tell them what was to happen to him. You see, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be given over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and hand him over to the foreigners, who will make fun of him, spit on him, scourge him, and kill him. But 3 days later, he will rise.
Okay, so up to there, but you see the change of location. We are already with him going up to Jerusalem, where this will happen, right? And then you will hear what will be the response of the disciples here. And let's hear the two brothers now. 35 to 45, the ambition of James and John.
James and John, the son of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said to him, Master, we want you to grant us what we're asking, what we're going to ask of you. And he said, what do you want me to do for you? They answered, grant us a seat, one at your right hand and one at your left, when you come into your glory. But Jesus said to them, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I drank, or be baptized in the way I'm baptized? They answered, we can. And Jesus told them, the cup that I drink, you will drink. You will be baptized in the way that I am baptized, but to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant. It has been prepared for others. On hearing this, the other 10 were angry with James and John. Jesus then called them to him and said, as you know, the only rulers of the nations behave like tyrants, and those in authority oppress the people. But it shall not be so among you. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you shall make yourself slave to all. Think of the Son of Man, who has not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life to redeem many.
Okay, so similar to the second prediction, you have here Jesus again saying what will happen to him. And what was the response? James and John asking
for a seat.
Resurfing.
For the VIP seat.
Asking for the VIP seat. And the question of Jesus, can you drink the cup I am baptized, to be baptized? So the metaphor of drinking the cup, no, that is used in the Old Testament to refer to accepting the destiny given to you by God. No? My cup and my portion, you can also see that in the Psalms. Jesus' baptism is to be his crucifixion and death for the salvation of the human race. And so the true discipleship, drinking the cup, would be participation in this passion, death, and resurrection. So again here, the reinforcement of that figure of discipleship, disciple as servant. So first is disciple as cross-bearer, the one who renounces himself. Disciple as a slave, a servant, but also as simple like a child. No? The child is also one figure of the disciple. And then here, as servant. Why? Because the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many, because we are following the Master. Okay, so at this point, somehow you said, when will the disciples understand? This is already the third time, no? So somehow you feel, is there any hope for the disciples? When Jesus kept on saying the same thing, but you hear that the disciples always fail to understand. So, where is the hope? Now we will hear, this is the ending of chapter 10, no? And from here, this is actually a second story of healing. There was a first story in the end of chapter 7 where you have the healing in two parts, no? But this time we have Bartimaeus. And this will somehow be the sign of hope in the Gospel of Mark, okay? The healing of the blind, because if you see, these disciples were with Jesus, they can see Jesus, they can hear, but they cannot understand. Okay, they're like blind people. And so Mark presents this blind man, Bartimaeus. Let's listen to this story.
The blind men of Jericho. They came to Jericho. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, a blind beggar, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth passing by, he began to call out, "Son of David, Jesus, have mercy on me." Many people scolded him and told him to keep quiet, but he shouted all the louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." He immediately threw aside his cloak, jumped up, and went to Jesus. Then Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said, "Master, let me see again." And Jesus said to him, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he could see, and he followed Jesus along the road.
Okay. Do you believe there is hope?
Yes, of course, sister. Of course,
So
sister.
with this figure, you look at this blind man, no? He was blind, but despite his blindness and all the connotations, no? A blind man would be on the road, a poor one, etc., etc. He sees the royal dimensions of Jesus. He called Jesus Son of David. Son of David, have mercy on me. No? And then he is able to discern who this Jesus is. Maybe he asked around. We can also give that a kind of interpretation. No? And then the people didn't want to mind him. Even the disciples, no, did not want to mind. But he persisted despite all the hindrance. No? So faith does not really come easy. But this man has really resilience. He was able to surmount the obstacles. No? The others in the crowd wanted him to be silent, but he continued crying. And thirdly, you remember James and John when Jesus, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Fighting for the
A
seat.
seat on your right and your left.
Yeah.
But when Jesus asked Bartimaeus, "What do you want me to do for you?" His reply was that I would see again.
Yeah.
Okay, so very simple. It's really just wholeness and deliverance. Okay, healing. Bartimaeus, what Bartimaeus says is fully consistent with the expression of faith. No? When Jesus said at the end, "Your faith has made you well." It is your faith that is in action here. So it's good to compare this, no? James and John requested special privilege, honor, power, whatever, no? Whereas Bartimaeus only asked for a new spiritual, a new sight that also, you see, in the end, also gave him the power to follow Jesus. And we said, no, the disciple is the one who follows, who walks after Jesus. See here the change, what do you call this, the transformation of Bartimaeus. In the beginning of the story, he was just along the side. That's the preposition in Greek, para, no, the road. But the story ends, the story ends, he follows Jesus on the road. So even the Greek is en, no? En hodos, so on the road. Bartimaeus moves from a place of invisibility to the heart of the scene. Now you can say, well, Bartimaeus now is becoming a disciple. We are in Jericho, but they are already journeying to Jerusalem, the place of Jesus' suffering, passion, and death. It is the same way that Jesus calls his disciples to walk. Okay? So with these three predictions of the passion also comes the three lessons on discipleship. It's very well done, actually. It's very well written. And after this, then, we will have the passion narrative. The entry into Jerusalem, as we said, how many chapters in Mark?
Is
Only?
it 16.
16.
Yeah.
Bravo. You really learn from the first lesson. So, 16, John has 20, Luke has 24, and Matthew has 28. I told them, no, there's a mnemonic device there. So it's multiples of 4. But anyway, so 16 chapters. Now, in the next episode, we will be entering with Jesus in Jerusalem, and which is a very good preparation for the Holy Week celebration. So our lessons here has also its synchronicity, walking together with the liturgical celebration that we are into in this season of Lent. Okay? Now, as a final prayer, and I would like to propose a song. This is, I said, this was composed maybe before you were born. This is from a movie, Godspell, produced in Toronto, is it? Patrick, maybe you can research for us. So this is called Day by Day, you notice there the difficulty of the disciples to see. So we pray for the grace to see more clearly, okay? And then the grace to love more dearly, which will really help us to follow more dearly, okay? So this will be our song as well as our prayer, as I thank you all, also, of course, Mike, in our session today that we are bringing also, hopefully, to everybody to participate in this invitation to discipleship.
And thank you to you for sharing, imparting so much knowledge to us.
Thank you for preparing.
Thank you
and for the
the notes.
insightful lecture. I mean, we're obviously somehow, in a sense, almost similar to James and John. Sometimes, even though we do surface, we are also kind of asking for privilege, right?
Yes.
But in the sense, we also
Yes.
have to learn more.
Yes.
So these sessions are very insightful. Thank you.
That's
teacher.
true. We're all struggling to be real disciples.
Yes, exactly.
Okay? So we'll sing this now. Hopefully we will be able to give justice to this song. I was telling our friends here, this song, these words actually come from an old prayer from Richard St. Victor, I think. So this is not just because of the Godspell movie. Okay, so we sing it. Day by day,
Day by day,
day by day,
day by day.
Oh, dear Lord, three things I pray. See thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, follow thee more nearly, day by day, day by day,
Day by day,
day by day,
day by day.
Oh, dear Lord, three things I pray. See thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, follow thee more nearly, day by day. Last time, Mike, you join? Day by day,
Day by day,
day by day,
day by day.
oh, dear Lord, three things I pray. See thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, follow thee more
Thanks,
Good day
everyone.
to you all.